Yamaha were the first ones to give the average Indian motorcyclist the thrill of performance. In 1983, the Yamaha RD350 brought the thrill of speeds to the shores of the subcontinent, and later it was the RX100 which made performance affordable and reached a mass market. But those were the days before I was born. Let's skip ahead to 25 years. It's 2008 and Yamaha launches the R15, a motorcycle that completely changed Indian motorcycling with super sport inspired design, razor sharp handling, and Yamaha initiative like the One Make Championship for the R15, which got many young riders onto the track days for the very first time. But this is where the story takes a wrong turn, where the Indian motorcyclist waited for the R3 and the R6. Yamaha kept giving sticker upgrades to their R15. Yes, they did some changes to make the R15 more sporty with the V2, but that received mixed reactions. The introduction of the KTM redefined performance, whereas Yamaha focused mainly on making more scooters and making more money and competing with Honda. But it's 2018 now, and Yamaha has come back with a fully kitted out R3 and the new heartthrob of the young Indian rider. Presenting the Yamaha YZF R15 V3. We'll jump right into the ride discussion, but let's first take a look at the specs and what's different in this all-new version. The engine has been upped from a 149cc to a 155cc single-cylinder motor, which is producing 19 bhp at 10,000 rpm. That astronomically high rpm figure had me worried about the lack of low-end performance, but Yamaha claims that with variable valve timing, they can use two different cams, one to deliver low-end torque and the other to deliver more power from 7,000 rpm onwards. Torque figures are 15 Newton meters, and that isn't something groundbreaking, and that is why you do feel the sluggishness in the lower rpms. The Yamaha R15 retains the Deltabox frame from the version 1. It's a 10-year-old frame now, but even now the frame feels just as good, and it's one of the favorite things of mine on this motorcycle. Braking duties are performed by a 282mm single disc up front, which is provided by Bi-Brake, and a 220mm single disc at the rear, which is somehow provided by Nissan. The front brakes could have been a lot better. They lack the initial bite but offer great feedback to the rider, and the progressive braking is also decent, but I still would have wanted much from the front brake. Especially since it's a sport bike, you cannot really use the rear brake too much, and it doesn't come with ABS, which has shocked many. Even an optional ABS is not on offer. The suspension has been beefed up, and it's now a 41mm fork from the 33mm on the previous version, and that does increase stability on the front. But unlike the international version, the Indian version doesn't get the upside down forks. That is probably because of cost cutting. The rear suspension is a swing arm links type suspension, and I absolutely love how much feedback and feel it transmits back to the rider from the rear wheel, especially in the corners. We still are running MRF 9 low grip bias ply tires, and a lot of people would have wanted radial tires. Though these tires are great on the dry, their wet grip is questionable. The motorcycle weighs 139 kgs fully fueled, which is just 3 kg more than the previous version. They have shortened the wheelbase by 20mm to give this bike more agility, and which is obviously required since the tires have been beefed up. Revised the seat height and raised it by 15mm. That's gonna be a little bad for the shorter riders. The fuel tank capacity has been reduced to 11 liters, but with 38 to 40 kilometers per liter mileage, this motorcycle has a very decent range of 400 kilometers or more, which is really praiseworthy. Since you will not be taking this bike to tour, I think that kind of a range is more than enough for every type of rider. The motorcycle also comes with a slip assist clutch and all new LED headlamps. Apart from looking good, they're also pretty functional. Available in two different paint schemes, we had our hands on the grey and red combination, which I absolutely love. The Daytona series of mods do offer further customization, and Rs 2200 for frame sliders, which will save your fairings from a high side and low side crash, are my first recommendation. The second recommendation from the Daytona mods kit would be getting the bigger disc brake from the front, and that's gonna make your motorcycle more safe. So those are my two favorite mods on the Yamaha R15 V3. The 6-speed gearbox is perfect, And with this kind of a smooth clutch, it really takes your shifting game to a next level. And launching this motorcycle off the line is a real pleasure, and it was finally time to do just that. Put it onto the actual road test and see how this motorcycle performs.
I think that was pretty good. Let's talk a bit about the ergonomics. The handlebars are low, that's R15 tradition, but you know, they've raised the seat height, so you really feel that much more comfortable, to be honest, because there's more leg room right now. It's 815 millimeters, so even if you're 5'5", I think you'll be comfortable on this bike. A lot of taller riders, like 6 feet and above, didn't want to ride the original R15, and they didn't buy the motorcycle just because they didn't like the ergonomics. Now, I'm not 6 feet, but I think they'll be a lot better on this bike. The foot pegs are rear set, but they're not that aggressively rear set. So in the city it's manageable, but while you're going into the corners, you do feel that they're doing just about fine. I think they've got the ergonomics a lot better, because I've been riding this bike for over 1 hour right now, and it's been mostly slow riding with a little bit of fast paced and a slight bit of cornering. But I think what we're getting out of this is pretty good, pretty decent on the comfort side. So if you can manage it in the city, it will be very easy to putter around with. It's very light. It's 139 kgs wet, which is 3 kgs heavier than the previous bike, but you really don't feel the weight because the wheelbase has been shortened, and it's a very agile motorcycle right now. I'd like to talk about the styling a little bit. First, let's talk about the LED headlamps. They look absolutely brilliant. This is the low beam, and you flick it to the high beam, it looks really great. And then you have these mirrors, new shape but the same sort of functionality, and they're adjustable. They fold in pretty nicely. They've got a hinge action, so if you're doing filtering, you can easily fold them in. And well, the gear shift lever is perfectly positioned, so and it is a great lever. You don't have any problems with the gearbox, no false neutrals, and it shifts with very little effort, but there's a good amount of feedback to it. The front brake, which I'm going to talk about, has 282 millimeter brakes up front, and that's really nice because it's giving a lot of feedback and feel and progressive braking. But to be honest, it doesn't have that much initial bite. I don't really like to use the rear brake on a sport bike, especially since they do have a tendency to skid very easily. On the version 1, the rear brake used to lock up the rear wheel pretty easily, and that was a very thin tire. So right now I think it'll be better. The styling perspective, this very nice curved windshield is great for having it on a stock bike, right? So that's definitely there. If you compare it, it's very curved body panels. It looks like a bigger bike, it feels like a bigger bike while you're sitting on it, and it doesn't feel heavy at all. So they've given it the big bike looks without the big bike weight, because obviously with this kind of power, if you increase the weight too much, you're gonna feel that this bike has no power at all. So they've managed to give it a big bike look and feel without increasing the weight too much. There are plastic shrouds on the metal tank to make it look even bigger, and it's a new shape tank, and it looks really aggressive. Fits very well with the rest of the motorcycle. So overall pleased with the bike, and now looking forward to some higher speed testing. Now is the time where we get to see about the wind protection. I would say it's good, but not as good as the Apache RR310. But the bike is really stable on the straights, and that kind of gives you confidence. Now remember, this is one of the most bumpiest highways, so at higher speeds it destabilizes almost any motorcycle, and we can't really blame the bike for that. But the suspension, you can really say that how the suspension will behave under bumps. And doing 120, 130, this sort of speeds is pretty easy on this bike. So we're seeing about 134 speedo indicated on that, and that was good. It can go further, I believe, but after 130 the speedo rises very slowly, so reaching to that top speed is not gonna be like some of those bikes that you just go up and up and up and you hit the limiter, because on the highway you would feel that the taller 6th gear is really for cruising, so it's not in a hurry to hit its top speed anytime soon. It is a very rev happy engine, so even at 8000 rpm the engine doesn't feel stressed, because it can be revved all the way up to 11500 rpm. So that's one thing that you may not enjoy it in the city, but in the highway you can take good advantage of that, and that is exactly how I used to ride the motorcycle when I was having this same bike. So when we are on the Indian highway, the general thing that I want to see is whether the motorcycle is capable of cruising at 100 kilometers per hour speed without stressing out the engine, and that's going to be at the 6th gear. Right now we're in the 5th, and we're at 7,500 rpm, and we can move it up to 6th and see the rpms dropping to 5,500 rpm, and if we move it back up to 7,000 rpm we have exactly 100 kilometers per hour speed, which is the cruising speed. And at 7,000 rpm I'd say the bike is almost vibration free, so it is capable of doing cruising speeds of 100 kilometers per hour pretty easily on the highway, and that is, I think, a safe speed for this motorcycle, because the brakes aren't there for any higher speed. I would not want to cruise on a higher speed with this kind of braking performance. And it is not safe actually for any smaller capacity motorcycle to do that sort of stuff, specifically because they don't have the stickiest tires or the best brakes. It is still the best 150cc. I mean, I've ridden quite a few, and right now, as the CBR 150, which was the only motorcycle which could challenge this bike, is no longer being sold, it's kind of like having a monopoly on the Indian market for a sporty 150cc motorcycle. The next thing would be a Gixxer, which is much more inexpensive, but it doesn't come anywhere close to this motorcycle in terms of technology or anything for that matter. So yeah, it's kind of like the king of the 150s. You could argue that a Pulsar RS 200 is just about maybe 7,000 more expensive, and that is better for overall touring, and that is also better because it comes with an ABS system. I think they have made it a dual channel ABS this year, I'm not sure. So the ABS version of the Pulsar must be expensive than this, but it will still be having more power. It is more comfortable, and it has ABS. So if you guys are looking for a motorcycle that is more tour worthy, I think the ABS version of the Pulsar 200 RS makes more sense. But the way this motorcycle looks, feels and handles, that's a completely premium, different idea. Now it is not late for Yamaha. It is not too late for Yamaha to correct their small mistake on this motorcycle and to equip this with an ABS system, even as an optional. I mean, they can release an optional ABS version later if they feel like. Next year law is gonna come in and every motorcycle above 125cc motorcycle is gonna have ABS, but we don't know. That law is getting delayed for the last 3 years, so we're not 100% sure whether that's coming in next year or not. If it comes, it's better for the Indian rider, because that's gonna be putting an end to our quabbing about ABS, because it'll become the law and it'll be mandatory, just like wearing a helmet is. I'm waiting for that day, but till that day I really appeal to manufacturers, because I know they watch these reviews, to give us an ABS system. That would be really nice. I've been on this motorcycle since 7 a.m. in the morning. Now it's 11. I haven't been riding constantly, and I put in about 3 hours of riding so far. I must say that I'm feeling a little bit of pain here because I wasn't leaning down too much. I was just locking up my elbows a little bit in the cruising position, and still I would say the seats are good. It's not like those KTM's super hard seats. It's not super soft as well, so they've got that part right, and the seat is wide, so that has always been there in the R15s, so it gives great amount of support for the lower back. Now comes my favorite part, cornering. Beautiful motorcycle, holds right through the corner. There was a lot of traffic and I couldn't really get the initial in, but just look at that bike and how it holds through the line. This can absolutely murder at the track, and especially at those tight tracks like Kari Motor Speedway. Trust me, I've been to Kari and I would love to take this motorcycle there. Even with the stock MRF tires, this is the level of grip and performance that this bike has to offer. I cannot imagine what would happen if we got the Metzelas on this bike. I mean, I've been getting 1 or 2 corners here and there, not really getting it to put through the line exactly. I had it once before, and there I was not like recording. I wasn't recording. I had a good amount of corner speed as well. This one, absolutely amazing. I mean, I could have gone much lower if I wanted, but as you saw that there was a lot of traffic and I was trying to find a gap. So we're doing some city rides right now, and I would like to show you how flickable this bike is. So riding this bike in the traffic, not much of an issue. Filtering, you're gonna fold in the mirrors and then it's just gonna be as easy as any other bike. It's very light, so you're not gonna face much issues. Yeah, it is front heavy, and that is not a good thing for this type of corner cutting and stuff like he's doing right now. But what I tell you is, great bike to filter with and a very easy bike to live with. I've had a lot of questions about the ergonomics and how it's so aggressive and whether we could actually live with this bike. I would say until unless you're middle-aged or until unless you're suffering from back or wrist pains. I am carrying a very heavy backpack, around 8 kgs I believe on my back, and I've been riding with that most of the time, and I really don't feel much different, to be very honest. And the throttle inputs are very precise, so the moment you decelerate, you can feel that it's coming in. There is no hollowness, there is no what you call the false throttle. Whatever you do, 5-degree turn, you feel it. So that makes the throttle very accurate, and it's a boon to use in the city. It's a boon to use in the cornering, because you can be much more confident and you can rely on this bike to do exactly what you want it to do. One thing I have to say is how refined this bike feels at 5,500, 6,000 RPM. We're in the 5th gear, we're doing 60 kilometers per hour speedo indicated, which is like most of the cities have this kind of speed limits on the main roads. So it feels like a very effortless bike to ride, but if you're accelerating from this kind of a speed, you would obviously feel a little bit hollow. So if you want to enjoy that power, you have to play around with the gearbox quite a bit. But in case you're in the relaxed mode, I think this does just fine. And with this kind of agility, any kind of turn just becomes like a racetrack. I mean, you really enjoy putting the bike through the corners. I wish we had some twisties. I really wish we had some twisties. Do you see one thing interesting is when I'm kicking into 8000 RPM, there is on top of the speedo, there is a VVA that's coming in. So probably it's telling you that the VVA is turned on. I don't think I've seen that before. I will show you. The VVA turns on right now. It's showing VVA. So that means the variable valve adjustment system, which this engine has a new feature, that they're actually letting you know when it's kicking in. Apart from the clock, the console has everything: gear position indicator, odometer, RPM meter, which is a very nice curved thing. The speedometer is obvious and it's very big, so just a glance down you can check out whatever's out there. And the fuel, we've ridden it quite hard, and I would say that we're getting good mileage. It's about an 11 liters of fuel tank. Road conditions get bad, then this aggressive riding posture, what happens is you feel more of the road because there's a lot of feedback from the front, and that kind of tires out your wrists. And if you're carrying a backpack, that way it's going to be more onto your back. And for pillion riding as well, if the pillion's putting in too much pressure on your back, that's going to tire you out as well. The pillion seat is lower on this bike, so that's one thing they've done, but it's still a small size seat and it's not very well cushioned, so you can expect your slim girlfriend to fit there just fine, but just don't expect to do any long rides with her because she's gonna complain about it.
So we are back from the ride of the Yamaha R15 V3, and I must say that I'm really impressed. But let's just walk you through the conclusions and some of the drawbacks that we found. A lot of you have asked me questions about the headlights and their nighttime performance. The owner of this motorcycle, Agniv, also owns an FZ25, and he told me that the headlight performance is a lot better than FZ25. But I haven't tested it out myself. This has 4 headlights going out at the high beam, so obviously the performance should be a lot better. In the low beam, you have 2 headlights going out, and it's still better than the FZ25, but the spread isn't that wide, and it's not going to be one of those best headlights, but I think it will perform reasonably well. Second thing is about the tires. I have told you that these tires have good, reasonable dry grip, but the MRFs do struggle in the wet. Yamaha is offering you an optional Metzeler upgrade in near future, so a lot of you guys who are finicky about me about tire grips can go for that. The third thing that I really did not like about was the front disc and the amount of bite it had. The bike is really fast and it could do with better braking. There is not much else that I could find wrong with this motorcycle. Some might say that the pricing is really high, but I really don't think with the amount of tech and styling that it has got to offer that the pricing is any higher. ABS would have been an absolute boon on this motorcycle, even if it was an optional one. And those are really some of the small nitpicks that I have, with the ABS being the biggest one. The owner is claiming a mileage of about 38 kilometers to 40 even plus. Sometimes he's saying he's getting more than 40. I haven't tested it out myself. I was riding pretty hard, so we were getting much less returns, but those are not ideal riding conditions. So I would say that you are good with the mileage. Yamaha bikes in past have aged, and when they age the mileage reduces, but initially you can expect anywhere around 38 to 40 kilometers per liter mileage. I still think this is the best 150cc motorcycle in India right now, and it always was. For the last 10 years this has been the top 150cc motorcycle. It having the new more aggressive ergonomics, I personally think it is more comfortable because it's giving you more leg room with the taller seat height, and the rear set foot pegs are not really that much aggressive. So for comfort, I would say it's better than the previous one, though most reviews don't agree to my point of view, but that's just me. If you like this review, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I really need your shares, guys. We really work hard on these reviews, but we don't get that many views. So it really needs your support to share out in the social media and maybe recommend it to your friends who want this motorcycle, because I try to put out as much information as I can. These reviews get long, but I know you guys love it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon. This is Rahul. Goodbye, and a big thanks before I go to Anbjorno for facilitating this review, and the owner of this motorcycle, Agnev, for trusting me with his bike. He had some issues, so he couldn't accompany us. He just trusted me with his bike. Thank you for again, and goodbye.